I saw the simmering tension between the duplicitous Duke and his facelift-enhanced wife.
Meghan Markle is truly one of the most dangerous public figures on the world stage at the moment. She needs to be stopped.
New York was buzzing, but not in the way anyone expected. Meghan Markle and Prince Harry suddenly became the center of attention after a public moment that felt way more tense than usual. People locked in instantly, replaying every second, analyzing every glance, every move. The energy between them didn't feel right, with quick exchanges and body language that didn't match their usual calm, polished image at all. So what really went down during that NYC outing? Was it just the pressure of being watched from every angle, or was something deeper building behind the scenes? Every small detail, from their facial expressions to how they reacted in real time, is now under a microscope. And now, with whispers starting to spread, this situation is getting even more intense. Because if those early signs mean anything, this might not be just a one-time moment. The second Prince Harry stepped out of that sleek black SUV in New York, something felt off right away. The energy shifted fast. His face was telling a story he wasn't saying out loud, jaw tight, shoulders stiff, eyes scanning like he was feeling serious pressure with no space to relax. Meanwhile, Meghan Markle stayed composed, as always. That smile appeared instantly, like it was second nature, every step looking planned and controlled. But even through a screen, you could feel that distance between them. It wasn't loud, but it was definitely there. It felt like something behind the scenes just wasn't lining up. The tension was quiet but heavy, like one small moment could flip everything in front of everyone watching. Then things escalated fast. Someone in the crowd shouted,
Harry usually introduces his wife. Not last night. And my God, the look she shot him. It's like, you just wait till we're back at home. They really hate each other now, and they cannot hide it anymore.
She was the villain.
How was she dangerous?
Because of the need for her to rehabilitate her image.
"Stop using your kids for money." And the entire atmosphere shifted in seconds. Harry turned his head quickly toward the voice, and for a brief moment, that calm image slipped, showing a flash of frustration before he pulled it back together. He reached for Meghan's arm, not gently, not casually, but quick, like he needed to keep things moving. His lips started moving like he was saying something under his breath, but the noise swallowed it completely. The tension in that moment was intense, almost buzzing through the crowd. Cameras kept flashing nonstop, reporters calling out their names, trying to pull them back into that perfect public image. But by then, something already felt off, and people watching could see it clearly. Those smiles didn't land the same at all. They looked forced, like they were holding everything together just enough to get through the moment. It didn't feel like a fairy tale anymore. It felt like pressure building in real time, like something was starting to slip right in front of everyone watching. The same prince who once made bold moves for love now looked guarded, like he was trying to stay in control of a situation that wasn't so easy to manage anymore. They walked side by side on that red carpet, but somehow the space between them felt louder with every step, even from a distance. It still looked glamorous on the surface, no doubt about that. But if you really paid attention, the energy felt tense, like something deeper was playing out underneath all the lights. Every camera flash almost felt like it was asking the same question again and again. What actually changed between Harry and Meghan to turn something once so strong into something that now feels this uneasy?
Meghan and Harry have arrived at the Spring Studios in Tribeca, holding hands and looking pleased as punch to collect the Humanitarian of the Year awards from Project Healthy Minds. The comment sections of the newspapers covering their arrival have been lethal. 99% negative. The game really seems to be up.
New York City was alive that night. Sirens echoing in the distance, cameras flashing nonstop, and the pressure sitting heavy in the air. This was supposed to be their big moment, the return everyone had been waiting for. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle stepping back into the spotlight in full style after staying out of headlines for a while. The venue glowed in warm golden light, setting the stage perfectly for what people were calling their comeback. Everything looked flawless from the outside, but underneath all that shine, something felt off almost immediately. People nearby started picking up on it fast. The energy just didn't feel right. And that wasn't coming from just one person. It was being noticed by multiple people around them. Event staff quietly mentioned a tense moment inside the SUV before they even stepped out. One security member described Harry's expression as ice cold, like he was mentally preparing himself for something serious. At the same time, one insider claimed Meghan sat still, focused on adjusting her earrings in the reflection of the window, not even glancing toward him once. That detail alone had people raising eyebrows. By the time the door opened, cameras across Manhattan were already locked in, ready to capture every second. Everything had been planned down to perfection. One smooth walk, one flawless moment, one powerful image to send out to the world. But the second things started moving, it was clear something wasn't going according to plan. Harry stepped out first, breaking that expected rhythm completely. He moved ahead of Meghan, walking faster than usual, his eyes locked downward instead of engaging with the crowd calling out to them.
Meghan Markle's failed plan to bag a billionaire as her marriage to Prince Harry becomes more unhappy by the day.
She's already gotten the benefit of her bargain with Harry because she got the title. That's what she wanted. She wanted to be world famous. She wanted the title. You remember when Harry was single, he was the elephant.
That calm, confident presence people expected just wasn't there. Instead, there was something heavier surrounding him. Something tense, something that didn't match the polished image being presented. And this wasn't even the first time people noticed that shift. Just weeks earlier, during a private dinner, Meghan reportedly reached for Harry's hand, but he pulled back slightly under the table. He said something quick and low, and one witness claimed that moment changed the entire mood in the room instantly. Moments like that don't start loud. They start quietly, but they build. And behind the scenes, more conversations started happening, more people wondering if that picture-perfect image was starting to show real cracks. Now, even PR experts and body language analysts are pointing in the same direction. This didn't just begin in New York. That moment everyone saw wasn't just awkward timing in front of cameras. It looked like a small crack revealing something deeper going on behind the scenes. And here's where things get even more interesting. People can't agree on the exact reason behind it. Some say it's the non-stop spotlight, the constant pressure of being watched every second. Others point to expectations tied to their past and everything that comes with that level of attention. But one insider close to Prince Harry claims the real shift didn't even begin in America. According to them, it goes back earlier, all the way to Paris. That detail alone has people talking even more, because it suggests this tension didn't just appear overnight. It's been building slowly, step by step, long before this New York moment ever happened. To the public, everything still looked like a major win at first. Meghan Markle and Prince Harry stepped out, looking like a strong, united duo, ready to take control again. Cameras lit up the entire scene.
He was the one, the most eligible bachelor on earth. You could be a royal, you could become world famous overnight, you could live in a castle, you could have access to the crown jewels, you would be a princess. My God, yes, he could have had his...
As they walked the carpet, delivering that high-profile image people expected. For weeks, headlines had been building this up as their big return, the moment they would shift the narrative and take back control of their story. Every detail seemed carefully planned, from the outfits to the pacing to the timing of every glance. Meghan stood out in a shimmering gold gown, every move sharp and intentional, every look landing exactly where the cameras were waiting. Harry followed in a classic tuxedo, pausing briefly to acknowledge fans reaching out from behind the barriers. On the surface, it looked perfect: confidence, control, and a united front. Everything lined up exactly how people expected. Polished smiles, steady pacing, and that familiar high-profile presence. But that perfect image didn't last long at all. The second those camera flashes intensified, the shift became impossible to ignore. Even people watching through screens picked up on it instantly. Harry's expression didn't match Meghan's energy, not even close. While she kept that steady, camera-ready smile, his face looked tight, like he was pushing through the moment instead of actually feeling it. There was a quick breath, barely noticeable, but it spoke volumes about the pressure underneath everything. It was one of those tiny details that most people would miss, but once you saw it, it changed how the whole moment felt. No amount of preparation could fully hide that disconnect. Something between them felt off, and people definitely noticed it. Then, right in the middle of all that noise, one voice cut through everything. Loud, sharp, impossible to ignore. "Stop using your kids for money?" That shout hit hard, and for a split second, the entire moment seemed to freeze. Cameras caught everything. Meghan's smile slipped just slightly.
See you in a bit. We'll see you upstairs. Hey, Harry, when you go upstairs, let's support.
See her face. You get him, mate. He just doesn't seem to give a damn.
Almost invisible, but still there if you looked closely. Harry's jaw tightened, and his eyes shot toward the crowd before quickly turning back toward the entrance. But it didn't feel like simple surprise. It felt more like recognition, like those words had already been heard before, somewhere away from the cameras. And that's when he reached for her arm. Not soft, not relaxed, but quick and firm, like he was signaling without saying a word that it was time to move immediately. The shift in energy was instant, and you could feel it even through the footage. One photographer later shared that what looked like guidance didn't feel casual at all. It looked deliberate, like a quiet signal between them. From that moment on, the energy of the night changed completely. Whatever warmth had been there earlier seemed to fade, replaced by something more controlled, more distant. They kept moving, sticking to the routine, smiling, waving, playing their roles for the cameras like everything was normal. But something was clearly missing. To the crowd, it still looked like glamour and confidence. But for anyone paying close attention, it felt different, like emotions being carefully covered up, like something real was being held back just beneath the surface. What was supposed to be a strong public return slowly started to feel like a moment where small cracks were finally becoming visible. And when people went back and rewatched the footage, slowing it down frame by frame, even more details started to stand out. The real story wasn't in what they said, it was in the pauses, the space between them, and the small movements that just didn't line up. That distance didn't feel physical only. It showed up in ways that were harder to explain, and once people noticed it, it became impossible to ignore. Harry's hand hung loosely by his side, fingers twitching slightly like he was holding something back.
Meghan Markle is always attempting to, shall we say, build relationships with very, very, very rich.
Everything she touches turns to shit. And I think every sort of creative person behind her or deep pocket behind her knows it's an extraordinary risk. She's too toxic to touch.
Every time Meghan Markle reached toward him, her smile stayed perfectly locked in for the cameras, but he blinked hard, like someone trying to stay steady under pressure. That contrast stood out instantly, and once people saw it, they couldn't unsee it. Body language experts jumped in fast, and they didn't hold back their observations. One described Harry's posture as a defensive withdrawal, saying it looked like someone emotionally pulling back in real time, right in front of everyone. Another analyst pointed out that Meghan's laughter seemed just a little delayed, like it came a second too late. That small delay created a strange feeling, like everything was coordinated but not truly connected. It looked smooth on the surface, but underneath something just didn't sync up the way people expected. And what made it even more intense? This wasn't the first time people noticed these signals. Just weeks earlier, at a major charity event hosted by Kevin Costner, similar moments had already raised eyebrows. Witnesses claimed that when Meghan tried to guide the conversation, Harry's expression shifted. His jaw tightened, his eyes went distant, showing that same cold, faraway look that later appeared again in New York, only stronger this time. Behind the scenes, the whispers started building fast. A stylist who worked with Meghan that night claimed the fitting ended earlier than expected after a disagreement about her outfit. Another insider said a publicist overheard Meghan's voice down a hallway, sharp and direct, all business, followed by the sound of a door closing hard. Through all of that, Harry reportedly stayed quiet, and that silence didn't go unnoticed. In fact, that silence became the pattern, at least according to people close to the situation.
She flirts openly with other men. I remember when she was at that tennis match, looked like she was flirting with Serena Williams' husband, like with her skirt and just how she just looks at men. It's living a life that she's winning and she's doing all these great things, but the reality is not that. The reality is she's a joke. It's embarrassing at this point. It's like, oh my gosh, for real, Meghan, you did that? You're going to keep doing this? I mean, wow.
Instead of reacting outwardly, Harry seemed to pull inward, saying less and less while everything around him got louder. So when that red carpet moment finally happened, that quiet distance ended up speaking louder than anything he could have said out loud. Social media picked up on it instantly. Side-by-side images started spreading everywhere, showing Harry leaning slightly away, his expression hard to read, while Meghan leaned in with that polished, camera-ready warmth. Agencies labeled the photos as romantic, But people who had been watching closely saw something completely different. It didn't look like closeness. It looked like quiet endurance playing out in real time. By the end of the night, even some event staff stopped calling it chemistry. One producer quietly admitted it felt more like watching two people play out a scene they didn't fully believe in anymore. The smiles were still there, the poses still sharp, but the energy between them had clearly shifted. And hanging over everything was one big question. What actually changed? How did something that once looked so strong start to feel more like a performance? To really understand that, people started looking back, not just to New York, not even to California, but all the way to Paris. Because long before that tense NYC moment, the signs were already building in the City of Lights. That trip was supposed to be Meghan Markle's standout return, high fashion, front row appearances, cameras flashing nonstop, everything designed to look like a major comeback.
Ruined Harry. Now that the once carefree, fun-loving prince has turned into a miserable moaner, lashing out from the depths of his paranoia at a world he thinks is conspiring against.
They would tell you it's for protecting children online, but then why is Meghan Markle at a Balenciaga show accused of predatory behavior in the form of children's image?
Every detail was carefully set up to signal success, but those who were actually there described a very different atmosphere. They described two people moving through the same space like strangers, physically close but emotionally distant. Harry kept a noticeable gap, his focus straight ahead, while Meghan worked the room with that signature red carpet smile, hitting every camera angle perfectly. To the public, it looked polished and glamorous, but up close, people said it felt cold. And then came the moment that really got people talking. Meghan's team filmed her walking through the Alma Tunnel, a location deeply connected to Princess Diana's history. The visual carried weight, emotion, and a lot of meaning. Insiders say that's when the tension really started rising. Meghan faced the camera with a soft, controlled smile, her scarf wrapped close, almost like she was guarding more than just the cold air. The expression looked calm, but also very intentional, very measured. When that clip made its way online, reactions came in fast. But according to those behind the scenes, what happened privately carried even more intensity than what the public saw. People close to the couple say Prince Harry wasn't just caught off guard. This ran deeper than a quick reaction. It was described as a quiet, heavy kind of frustration that didn't fade easily. That location wasn't just another stop for him. It held real meaning, something personal and serious. For Meghan Markle, the moment was framed as symbolic, tied to history and legacy. But for Harry, it seemed to land very differently. Less like a tribute and more like stepping into something deeply personal that didn't feel right to revisit in that way. Insiders say that night became one of their most difficult moments behind the scenes.
Especially when he's on the BBC saying that it's not safe enough for my family in the UK, but it's safe enough for Meghan to be alone in Paris, literally engaging with the paparazzi you say killed your mother.
I know my latest money-making scheme is going to be cosplaying the final night that Princess Diana died. It's truly sick.
The disagreement wasn't loud or chaotic, but it carried a different kind of intensity, sharp, direct, and emotional in a quiet way. Harry reportedly questioned how something so closely connected to his mother could be used in that kind of filmed setting. Meghan explained it as creative and intentional, saying it was meant to be thoughtful and respectful. But even with that explanation, something shifted that night, quietly but clearly. After that, the space between them didn't just stay, it grew. Harry pulled back more, speaking less, while Meghan stopped trying to explain every decision. What once felt natural started to feel structured. The smiles, the gestures, even the way they stood together began to look more planned than genuine. It gave the impression of two people trying to maintain an image rather than simply living in the moment. By the time they reached New York, that shift was impossible to ignore. The laughter didn't land the same. The eye contact felt brief. The connection people once pointed out didn't feel as strong anymore. Harry no longer looked openly frustrated. He looked distant, like he had stepped back emotionally. And that's what really caught people off guard. It wasn't loud reactions or dramatic scenes that stood out. It was that quiet distance slowly becoming more visible. Because when something meaningful starts to fade, it rarely happens all at once. It shows up in small pauses, short replies, and the kind of silence that lingers just a little too long. What may have started earlier didn't stay hidden forever. It just became easier to see over time. And in those in-between moments, the looks, the timing, the quiet gaps, you could feel it clearly. Something just wasn't fully in sync anymore. This wasn't the bright, glowing fairy tale people once believed in. It had shifted into something far more complicated, something harder to read and even harder to explain. You could see it in everything. The sharp flashes of camera lights, the smooth glide of designer, outfits, the way they moved past microphones while the crowd waited for something real to slip through. Every word they shared in public sounded polished, measured, carefully delivered. But those pauses in between, they were saying even more. Their story now feels split. Part performance, part something much more personal. Everything looks controlled, well-timed, and perfectly camera-ready. But underneath that composed image is a silence that pulls attention in. It's the kind of quiet that makes people watch closer, not wondering if something feels off, but when it might finally show itself. What seems to be shifting between them isn't loud or dramatic. It's subtle, almost hidden. It shows up in the smallest details, the kind you could easily miss if you're not paying attention. It feels like two people who know exactly how to present themselves, staying in sync for the public, while something more uncertain sits just below the surface. Every movement starts to feel intentional, timed reactions, controlled expressions, carefully chosen words. Conversations seem shorter, like both are holding back more than they're saying. Harry's voice comes across steady but restrained, while Meghan's tone stays smooth yet slightly tense. Together, it creates a dynamic that feels more structured than natural, like they're following a path instead of moving freely. And that's where the real shift stands out. It's no longer about obvious moments, it's about precision. A carefully built image shaped by timing and control is now starting to feel slightly out of sync the more people look at it. The deeper people pay attention, the more those small details begin to stand out. Every glance, every pause, every word carries more weight than it seems, because sometimes it's not what's said out loud that tells the story, it's everything that isn't. And in those quiet gaps, something unspoken keeps building, becoming harder and harder to ignore. Maybe those smiles were real at the beginning. Maybe the laughter on those early red carpets came naturally, without pressure or second thought. But somewhere between the constant spotlight and the quiet moments that followed, something started to change. The looks didn't last as long. The gestures felt less natural, and what once came across as a strong, united front slowly started to feel more complicated. What began as a bold move together gradually started to look like tension building beneath the surface. And here's the thing, not every story ends with a loud moment. Not every shift comes with a dramatic announcement. For Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, if things truly are changing, it might not happen in a way people expect. It could be the quiet kind of distance, the kind that grows slowly over time, almost unnoticed, until one day it becomes impossible to ignore. The cameras will keep flashing, the headlines will keep moving, but the bigger question won't disappear. Was their connection strong enough to handle everything that came with the attention, the pressure, and the expectations placed on them? Because when something genuine starts to feel structured, when a real connection begins to look more like routine, that kind of shift doesn't happen overnight. It builds slowly, piece by piece, somewhere between public moments and private reality. And that gap, people are noticing it more than ever. What happened in New York didn't feel like just another appearance. It felt like a glimpse into something deeper, something that had been building over time. And for those who have been paying close attention, this didn't come out of nowhere. It shows up in patterns, in small changes, in moments that don't quite match the image being presented. Because in the end, it's not always the big headlines that tell the full story. It's the subtle ones, the pauses, the timing, the way things feel slightly out of sync. And once those details start to stand out, they become very hard to ignore. And if anyone thinks this is the first time people close to Meghan Markle have noticed that kind of distance, some would say otherwise. Because long before the global spotlight, before the titles and worldwide attention, there were earlier relationships that didn't last. One name that often comes up is Trevor Engelson, her former husband, who was part of her life years before everything changed. Their relationship stayed mostly private at the time, but looking back, some observers point to it as an example of how quickly things can shift when life circumstances evolve. As Meghan's career began to grow and new opportunities opened up, their relationship eventually came to an end. While neither side has shared many personal details publicly, the timeline itself has kept people curious and talking. Now, with recent public moments bringing fresh attention, some are starting to connect past and present. They're wondering if certain patterns like distance, timing, and pressure can show up more than once across different stages of life. It's not about jumping to conclusions. It's about noticing how similar themes can appear under completely different spotlights. And that's exactly why moments like the one in New York are getting so much attention right now. For some, it's not just about what happened in front of the cameras, it's about how it fits into a much bigger picture that might still be unfolding. People are still trying to fully understand what really happened. And somehow, everything keeps leading back to that one moment in New York. The looks, the timing, the space between them, it's all being replayed again and again. Because when you line everything up, the Paris trip, the public appearances, those subtle shifts in energy, it starts to feel less like one isolated moment and more like pieces of a bigger story slowly coming together. Not loud, not explosive, but steady enough that more people are starting to notice it. Some see pressure building, others see distance growing, and some think it's simply the weight of constant attention catching up with them. But no matter how you look at it, one thing stands out clearly. Something about that connection doesn't feel the same as it once did, and that's exactly what keeps people watching. Everyone is trying to read between the lines now, trying to figure out what's real and what's just for the cameras. Because the more these moments get replayed, the more questions start to come up. So now it comes down to you. What do you think? Was that NYC moment just stress under the spotlight, or did it reveal something deeper behind the scenes? Did you notice the body language people keep talking about, or do you think it's all being overanalyzed? From Paris to now, does this feel like a temporary phase or something bigger building over time? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this conversation is only getting bigger every single day. And if you made it this far, make sure you hit like, subscribe, and share this with someone who's been following this story too. The more people start paying attention, the more there is to uncover. See you on the next one.